Hey everybody, welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. And today we have an awesome guest from our show, Management Unfiltered. Zach Shelley, probably one of the three most famous male office managers in the entire industry. I wanted to bring Zach on from over at Management Unfiltered to talk about a subject that I think docs need to talk about, and it's insurance processing and verification. This is an area of extreme pain for you guys. And a lot of times, I don't think you know the pain is there. Sometimes we open up a dental intelligence with some of our clients, and we're like, "Hey doc, do you know you have $200,000 out past 90 days?" No, I don't. And a lot of times, someone knows in the practice that there's this snowballing problem, but the attitude is, well, doc doesn't look, and I'll get this handled, but it just snowballs and it never gets handled. Then it's scary to handle. So I think, Doc, you need to know your numbers. But today, what we're going to focus on is one, what is the pain points, and two, um, you know, when is the time to know that you have to outsource it? And everyone always looks at outsourcing and is like, oh, well, that's expensive. Well, what I will tell you is expensive is having an employee who isn't getting it all for you. Or what's expensive is, let's say they are getting it all, and you have someone high paid like a manager doing it. So for Zach, like, you know, they're processing their own insurance in house. In the first obvious pain point is these poor women up front having to verify insurance benefits. Can you dig into why that's so painful? What the doc might not know about it? Like, can you dig into that more for us? Like the verification part. Let's start at the beginning of the process. Let's talk about verification and how much of that sucks.
It's one of the most annoying things you have to do in the practice, just to start off. And let's just talk about the patient experience to start off with, Matt, right? Like a patient walks in the door, 90% of these practices that I've walked into, the front desk's heads down, they're on a phone, they're typing, they don't even look at the patient when they walk in because they're on the
Oh,
phone talking to insurance, because they're filling out the plan on the PMS, or they're saying, hey, I've got new insurance. And then all of a sudden, that stressful look just overcomes the front desk because they've got 30 other insurances they're still trying to deal with. And now this patient last minute just put an insurance on their tab. So now the patient's like, are they mad at me because I have new insurance and I didn't let them know? Like, are they upset I'm here now because things have changed? And really, that patient experience starts to decline because we're not able to just look up and smile. And this is what I tell a lot of people is like, how beautiful would it be to come into a practice and your team looks up, smiles, and greets a patient, says, hey, I'm so happy to be here. Because the amount of time that they're spending with insurance, whether it's on a portal and then it doesn't have the information on the portal that they need to get. So now they're going in and getting on a phone call and they're on hold for an hour. And the patient's like, well, why can't you get my benefits? And they're like, it's nothing that I'm doing. I'm waiting for the rep to get on the phone. And then another patient comes in and they have another patient. And all it does is end up snowballing. But then you got all these other duties of confirming patients, keeping the schedule full, treatment plan presentation and case acceptance, payment plans for closing treatment, collecting balances on check-in or check-out with patients that are coming through, and making sure their next hygiene scheduled. I mean, the amount of things we have on the front office is insane. And then us as, practice managers and docs are like, all right, well, you all need to handle all this because the practice still needs to be, flowing how it needs to. The profitability needs to be there. The schedule needs to be full. But we're giving you 300 different things to do and expecting you to have perfection with this. And it's quite not possible, Matt. I mean, we're setting our front office team up for failure. And that ends up going through the whole life cycle of the patient experience is on the decline from there.
let's kind of profile a practice for our listeners. So let's say a practice is doing 150,000 a month in collections. Let's say it's PPO heavy. What percentage of an employee's time do you think is spent on verification and processing insurance in a practice that's doing 150 that's PPO heavy? What percentage of the time do you think?
I would say in between 50 to 75% of their time if they're doing it right.
Wow. I would have never guessed that much. And that same person is asked to do a whole lot with that last 50 to 25%. So we have these individuals that are up front and they are the patient experience. And then we're giving them a frustrating, stressful thing for half their time. How good could our patient experience really be?
It's not.
It's not.
And Matt, the biggest, how could I piss you off right now? Tell me one way I could piss you off aside from punching you in the face.
You couldn't punch me in the face, first of all. You'd get hurt really bad because I'm a ninja and you're not. If you just didn't answer me, like if we were talking and you were ignoring me, I would slap
Okay.
the crap out of you. I'd slap the shit out of you. Like if we were talking and you're just like, okay, and you weren't servicing me, if you weren't talking during this episode and you were distracted, you'd
Yeah.
really upset me.
Okay. Well, I know another way that would piss you off too is if I stole from you or took money from you, right?
Yeah.
Or messed with your money, right?
Anyone that knows me knows that's yes.
But it's not just you, right? Like if you took money from me, you
Everybody.
piss me off. And that's what I tell doctors all the time. I'm like, if you mess with your patient's money, you're going to piss them off. And it starts with insurance verification. Because if we screw up the verification, the benefits aren't correct, the estimates aren't correct, and we end up having to take more money from them or collect more on top, or insurance pays less because of a mistake we made, guess what? You've ruined that patient experience. And how many patients do you think they're going to refer to your practice when you don't have the billing under control?
Not many.
Yeah, none. And so this is one of those things where I tell this story to like everybody, the ham story. Have I ever shared that with you, Matt?
I think yeah. Your family member changed the way they made the ham, and it upset everybody. Why don't you explain it?
The grandma makes the ham. She cuts the ends off the ham, seasons it, makes it really good. Everybody in the family loves it. Mom does it the same way. Her daughter does it the same way. And then her daughter eventually starts making the ham and says, "Mom, why do you cut the ends off the ham?" And she's like, "I don't know. That's how my mom's done it." And then she goes to her and she's like, "Well, that's how my mom's done it." Finally goes back to the original, grandmother that did it. And she's like, "I cut the ends off the ham because it didn't fit in the oven." And so this is where we get into, we always are doing things because that's how it's always been done. So we're in-house doing insurance verification and practices because that's how we've always done it. And nobody's willing to accept that, hey, we can save you 50% on cost if you remote out and send it to an outsourcing for insurance verification, get great benefits, relieve that from your team, and now you have increased your patient experience and you made the culture in your practice better. Like, who doesn't want that? Like, a lot of times docs are like, well, I just keep feeding my team more money, but they're still unhappy. Yeah, because they're overwhelmed. It's not always about giving them more money. How about we relieve some stress off the back? Yeah, dude. And so that's where you can look at this through a different lens and say, okay, are we doing this just because that's how it's always been done? Or should we switch this and change this and make this to where my team's happier to work for me? The patients are more excited to come in because they can actually be looked in the face. Their billing's now accurate and correct because it started out from the beginning. Because when we look at RCM or we're looking at insurance verification and billing, they all run concurrently, right? Like it starts with verification, it ends with the actual processing and adjustments and EOBs being posted to the chart. So this is a full cycle here that you need to make sure that you are open to that idea, especially if your practice is growing and getting busier. If you're adding new patients to the schedule and you're starting to increase those to where our practice was seeing over 400 new patients a month, that's not feasible just to say, hey, team, now you got to add, 200 to 300 more patients of verification every month because we're busier. Like, we don't put systems in place as the practice grows. And outsourcing it, being able to have somebody doing that on the back end, guess what? Somebody calls out sick up front, verification is still happening.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I think are really good to take from that. One is that there's actually another layer of theft here. And it's theft from the dentist. It's theft by neglect. It's theft by neglect, and that can be caused by lots of things. But the reality is, you're not getting your money, and it's not malicious. It's just I'm not handling it right. Like I discovered a practice a few years ago where patient portion hadn't been collected in like over a year. And one, that's you're asking for an insurance audit. That's not going to go well. Two, when we dug into it, it started out with the front desk saying they didn't have enough time to do it. Then it turned into a new front desk person who wasn't comfortable asking for it. Right. And that's theft by neglect. She stole your money. You're never getting any of that money back. Right. So I think that the first layer, there is a layer of theft by neglect with this. Second, along with that is, I think, Doc, if you're blind to this, that's a failure on your part, because you should be conscious at least of all things revenue. And if some outside consultant or someone like us or you stumble upon a giant balance that's 90 days or 60 days out, you you didn't. I mean, you're at fault. You're the leader. You failed. I mean, Doc, listen, if you discover this, first thing you got to own is your failure. And and that's what you should say to your staff. You should say, hey, listen, you obviously had problems processing this. I failed because I didn't know, and then I failed in addressing the problem and finding a way to help you.
And I think the big thing here, Matt, is what you're saying, and what most practices struggle with is the lack of systems.
Yeah.
And the big thing here is when you're outsourcing your verification, that system still rolls no matter what else is happening in the practice, because they're not physically in the practice. They're not being held up by a question that's coming in, somebody saying, hey, so-and-so is being a jerk today. We need to talk about this. Like, none of that's happening because they're remotely hitting this on the back end, so they're not distracted by the day-to-day activities in the practice. So we add this layer of systemization where that doesn't waver, and their day can be more consistent moving through what needs to actually happen.
I think too, part of it is I think dentists confuse a couple things. First, I think dentists don't realize that the systems and processes are driven by you. Right? And I think what they do is I think they confuse hiring somebody with creating a system or process. So they hire an experienced office manager. They think that becomes a systems or processes. They hire an experienced front desk person, and they think, well, they're trained. They'll do it the way they know how. Well, every practice is different. Every doc is different. Every patient base is different. The movement through your practice is different. The tools in your practice are different. And like hiring the employee is not creating the systems and processes. You as an owner have to create the systems and processes that you want for your success, and their job is to execute on it. If you're expecting the employee to do this, bro, they're going to sit back and do things however. And the other problem with that is, if you're doing 100K a month and you want to do 150, you have to change things 50% to get to 150. If you're allowing the staff to decide how they're doing things, you can't dictate change for a growing practice. I will tell you, the number one limiting factor in growth of a practice is the staff not adjusting to the new level of work, and you guys limit yourself. And part of that is insurance processing and verification. It's a huge part of it. Because let's say Doc does get growth. Let's say we see 60 new patients next month. We usually see 20. But your money doesn't move.
We see this happen all the time.
Yeah, first failure, Doc, is you got to be a leader. You hiring people is not creating systems and processes. That comes from you. You drive that. Second is, if you discover, and the reason why that one's first is because that one should change the second one. If you discover that there's this giant billing problem, that's an indicator of two things. One, you failed as a leader. Two, you created no systems and processes, so that individual employee failed. And that failure, then what you do is this. Then you go, well, I'm going to hire someone to replace her who can do it. Then you do it all over again. It's the same thing. Then the dentist says some dumb stuff like this. Well, I can't find good help in my market. All the employees here are bad. Are you telling me that if I drive down the street to the other practice and every practice in the area, they're all going to say the same thing? They're not. The problem, Doc, is you're a failure as a leader in the practice, and you have to take these basic elements of, am I investing in the individual? Am I driving systems and processes? And am I looking at my numbers in the form of collections and verification and seeing how behind I am? If you just follow that linear path, the end will get better.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Matt. And a lot of these practices, they look at it like, man, we increased, but collections aren't increasing. And you start to look at their AR days and their collection percentage and how many claims are 30 plus. One of the biggest problems I see in practices, docs, if you're listening, you only look at 90 plus. Why are we looking at only 90 plus?
Because 60 and 30 becomes 90 plus. That's the first indicator.
Yes. And I've seen so many practices where their average AR days are over 100 days. It's taking you 100 days to collect $1, which is quite honestly embarrassing and ridiculous, and you shouldn't own a business if that's how you're running it. Because you're literally just slowly dying. And the fact that some of these are still going with those metrics is, impressive in a very, very sad way. You need to have systemization in your practice. And a lot of times when we talk about, okay, Well, I have them taking it. Now what's my front office team going to do? Or what's my insurance and billing coordinator going to do? They're going to do everything that they should have been doing that they weren't able to do. Greeting the patient with a smile on their face, following through with post-op calls, confirmation calls, getting treatment booked on the schedule, not forgetting to book their hygiene if they book it up front. The laundry list can continue to go. Collecting patient balances before they leave the freaking practice. Sending follow-up statements. I can tell you practice are like, yeah, I haven't sent statements in like 3 months. I've just been so busy. I'm like, does doctor know that? And he probably doesn't, because you're not following up on it, doc. And now you're just sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're wondering why you can't pay your bills. And that's why dentistry is stressful. It's like, I tell people, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Matt, but I tell people all the time, like, dentistry is one of those industries that we've caused so many issues that we complain about and do nothing to solve it, but we just complain.
Yeah, I think we complain, and I think when we're complaining about these issues, we always look at outside factors and try to justify the problem with an outside factor. And I think dental as a whole could really benefit from reading Jocko Willnick's book, Extreme Ownership, because I find it's a great book. I find it's funny. I was actually just on a call with two docs that own a practice, and I told them to read that, and they actually did. And they came back. Yeah, like, they came back and told me, we read this and we understand now, and they told me where their failures were and they owned it, which was really nice to have two guys who are new practice owners say that. And I think it's like with Doc, it's like we start to justify these outside factors, and we don't own at all that we're the problem, right? And Doc, there's some key things when you start saying to yourself, my employees are the problem, my practice struggles, whenever you say the word my, you're the problem, right? Like if you're saying my practice, this keyword is my, you own it. It's yours. Every single thing that happens in that practice that is a failure is your failure, no matter who caused it. 100% it's your failure. Whatever catastrophe happens is yours. Compressors go down, you didn't maintenance properly, whatever it is. Well, she was supposed to maintenance. No, you were hoping she would maintenance. You should have been checking, because now we have a catastrophic failure. She didn't call whoever for maintenance or whatever it was. So back to insurance processing. So we know the verifications part's hard because we have to collect all this verification money. We have to sit on all this verification data. We have to sit on the phone, and then that verification dictates how the person's paying. It should not dictate the treatment they're getting.
Amen.
Right? So the verification, in my opinion, you can still explain a patient's clinical needs without a verification, right? You can.
Absolutely.
100%. I think when the verification doesn't happen, everyone becomes a deer in headlights. And it's like, well, what do we do with the patient then? You get them in, you explain their needs, and hopefully by the end of doing all that, the verification's done. If not, we'll figure that out, right? You have to roll the punches. So after verification, the next problem is collecting the money. And where the time is an issue is, Doc, you have to understand, dollars not used by the business and lack of resources costs you money over time. Because if you had an extra $100,000 over the last 3 months, how much more could you have done for your business? And let's say you were taking the money out, how much more could you have invested in your retirement account and other things? That money cost you other money in the future. When it comes to money and waiting, time is never your friend. I would pretend this in my head to create a sense of urgency. If we go past 30 days, it's devalued by 25%. If we go past 60 days, it's devalued by like 70%. If we hit 90 days, it's a zero. And just understand, if you create a scenario where you go past 30 days, all of a sudden it's devalued, you're going to try to get everything in 30 days.
Absolutely.
I think the time over money thing is never thought about or addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you practices don't understand, and I say practice owners, it's dentists. Y'all don't understand the back end scene of RCM in your practice. And it's very sad. You sign up for these insurances, you go in network, you hire somebody to process the payments, and you have no freaking clue how any of it functions. Like, I would say less than 10% of dentists really understand the RCM in their practice when it comes to insurance processing. and what systems need to be in place. And this is why practices struggle. I can tell you, I've seen practices that have, $300,000 of past due insurance claims. This is over 30. And these practices are doing, 210 a month. So they have over a full month's worth of revenue just sitting in limbo that should be paid or has actually already been paid. Your team just doesn't have time to handle processing it and getting it in the bank for you. So you're sitting on this money, which when you talk about investment, Matt, you're sitting on this money for 2-3 months and you're looking at 300 grand. If you were to invest that, what does your dividend look like and how much money you're losing out on if you're trying to invest that? Or say you're doing a 12-month no interest plan, and if you hit past that 12 months on something that you're trying to pay off, then you just got all that back interest put on it because you weren't getting money flowing how it should be. You just cost yourself so much money just because you don't have an operational system in your practice. The other big problem that they don't have is you bring somebody in to process claims. You're like, all right, let's get a claim sent every day. Anything checks and stuff that comes in, let's get that taken care of. But we have no system on the back end of rejections, denials, delayed claims, or information needed for insurance claims.
Pictures need to be taken, submitted. Yeah.
Yeah, none of that. And you just sit there and complain of why you're poor, but you literally have the money right there. Like it is there. So I don't understand that mindset, and that's where we really need to open our eyes to having systemization, whether you have somebody in the practice doing it or you outsource, which in my opinion is probably the best thing you could do for your practice, because that cash flow never stops. Every single day that's being handled, rather than your team hoping that your team's doing it and then having to spend that time auditing them, making sure they're following up on these claims and hoping that the system's there.
And there's two other mentality problems. Okay. So you outsource it for a reason because it's not happening properly in the practice. But then the outsourcer has to work the systems out with your team and needs time to get everything to work, right? And then you're calling them going, well, it wasn't perfect. Well, what was happening before you had them? Like, did that company create a 40% increase and they're working their way to perfect and you're abusing them when you didn't make time to even handle it with your staff? And that's why you outsourced in the first place, right? It's like you work with the biller, not against them. Because let me tell you what, when you were paying a staff member way too much money, let's say a staff member is making 60 grand a year, 50% of the time is being spent on this, that's 30 grand a year. You pay this other company whatever it is, right? And then you're spending way less, but you're getting, let's say, a 50% increase and things being processed timely and they're working their way into perfection. And you're like up their butt about it, but you were never up the butt of the staff member who completely stole 30 grand from you or 300 grand by neglect, right? So, you have to also, like, you don't just become, like, all of a sudden you want to have this hardcore mentality of accountability when it's an outside company for whatever psychological reason. When it was an internal staff, you were okay with it. It's like, I'm okay getting abused by my family, but, if it's a bully at school, I'm gonna stand my ground.
Yeah.
Right? The other side of it is the holy grail of dental is to cut PPOs. Well, when you're having these billing, so normal PPO cutting, and I spend a lot of time with the greatest brain ever in PPO cutting, Tom Orant. Tom's a very good friend of mine. He's one of the people I call who's a knowledge well, and there's nobody who knows more about this than he does. Well, normally what he looks at is who are the worst paying PPOs by fee schedule. Well, now we have two anomalies. Who's the worst paying and who are we bad at collecting? Right? So where do you start cutting then? If we're not good at collecting and verifying, we can't start cutting at who pays the worst. Because what if the companies that pay the worst are the ones your staff's good at collecting? Right? So it's like, all right, and then you guys maybe hired a fee. Let's say you hired a fee negotiation company and you negotiated these awesome fees, but your staff sucks at collecting. What's the point?
100%. I tell a lot of people I'm not against cutting PPOs in practice, like reducing the dependency on insurance, but at the same time, we've demonized insurance so much on things that 90% of them are our fault. Like we are terrible at submitting correct documentation for an insurance claim, and they're like, insurance denied it, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't send a freaking PA for a crown. Like, you're an idiot. Like, you don't know what you're doing, but you're blaming the insurance. And that, yes, they should have denied that claim. Like, let's be real. If we're documenting correctly and we're sending good, clean claims, and then it's getting denied, that's a whole different story. But we've demonized insurance for 90% of our problems.
Yeah, and I think also there's problems we've caused by allowing the insurance company to dictate culture. So PPO culture is very toxic, right? And I always hear this from different people in the practice. Well, we're really held to the insurance company, and they're the ones really dictating care and telling us what we can do. No, they're not. What you're doing is you're being selfish, and you're presenting up to insurance patient value for the year, and you're saying we'll do 1 crown this year, 1 crown next year. You're not even given the option to do both crowns, and that's a whole nother place you're losing revenue because we're allowing the PPO to dictate care. When PPOs are involved, there's 3 loyalties. Patients loyal to themselves, docs loyal to the patient's care or should be, and the PPO is loyal to themselves. So we should not let the PPO dictate care. So on one side, we're not collecting all the money and verifying properly. It's causing massive problems. On the other side, our average patient value is lower because we're only presenting up to insurance benefits. And I find that both of them occur together. Like, it's very rare they have one or the other. They're normally together. So, doc, overall, your revenue is being strangled by the person presenting, who is normally also the person collecting. That individual is like a bottleneck for your money.
Yeah. And when you outsource this billing and allow your office manager, front office team, whoever's taking care of that, to free them up on case presentation and treatment presentation, then that person can walk in, that they have the time to have this conversation, an intentional conversation. They say, hey, Matt, Dr. Smith suggested crowns on 2 and 3 because of these reasons. Let's go ahead and get you back and schedule for these 2 crowns. Luckily, you have insurance, so one of them's covered in full. The other one's discounted at this rate because you're a network, and this is your total out-of-pocket cost. Let's get you scheduled next week and get those taken care of so they don't get worse. Rather than saying, hey, your insurance only covers $1,500. It'll cover most of the first one. Let's do that one and then come back the next year. Like, we need to start, training the system on our teams also with the treatment presentation of, hey, this is what you need. Good thing you have insurance because it's discounted, right? Like, it's not going to be the full fee anymore. Let's get you on the schedule. Let's get you taken care of. Let's get you healthy. But we always have this mindset of being scared to present these costs to these patients. And I'm like, do you go to the hospital and they're like, well, you have heart failure. You could just take this, or you could take vitamin C, or we can just let it ride and see what happens because insurance isn't going to cover that. Like, are you going to make the same decision? No. They're saying, hey, this is what you need. This is to get you healthy so you don't die. And now, is tooth pain going to kill you? Most likely not. There's a very, very small percentage that can happen. But at the same time, we treat it like, let's just put a Band-Aid on it and see what happens. We know what's going to happen. We're still lying to the patient. We're just masking the diagnosis and allowing the patient to continue until they end up needing a root canal, or we have to extract it and do an implant. And that's, once again, neglect too, because you're not prescribing or saying, hey, how important this is for this patient to get this, treatment. And that's what we did in our practice, is saying, hey, let's get these done. This is what's most important, and let's take care of you. And you have those intentional, educated conversations with the patient, they're more likely to accept treatment.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, we know it's going to become endo if you don't handle the filling, and then if it becomes a crown, it's going to become endo, right? So it's like, by doing that, you guys take an oath, and part of it is, you should be doing what's best for the patient all the time. Letting insurance dictate care isn't it. So, getting back to the insurance processing and verification, right? Let's talk about the human who's doing these things, right? And let's talk about the waterfall effect. So I'm the front desk girl, okay? Let's say we're 100. I am a good one. I'm bald and I'm fat and I have one leg. I'm basically an ogre. But yeah, you want me at your front desk? I'll scare people away. It's like I'm like Shrek. But anyway, right? The front desk girl is there. I'm not her. There's a front desk girl, okay? She has 2 screens open, 20 tabs, a phone, reappointment, all this stuff, right? And she has a patient's head floating over all that, asking her questions. And she has to verify and present treatment. So she gets all stressed out verifying and doing all this, right? Then you're handing her a treatment plan and saying, go present and close that treatment. And she's taking that stress into that room where she has to transfer emotion to somebody in a heightened fear state that has their own stress, that they should do treatment. So we're taking her and putting her at a deficiency. And doc, probably you're putting her at another deficiency because most docs that aren't leaders also don't shut up in the operatory and get out like they should. So then what's going to happen is you have stress here, stress here, stress here for that woman. You put her in the operatory. Doc, you didn't shut up and get out of there in 15 minutes, and you stole a bunch of time from her. Then you're looking at her and going, hey, man, you only got 5 minutes left, but you better go through financing and close this treatment and then be ready and be excited to hop back on the phone with insurance verification for the next one. Like, how's that woman supposed to be comfortable to sell treatment and transfer good emotion and have good body language when she feels beaten by the time she gets in there? She's already beat. The insurance company beat her up. The phone calls beat her up. And now it's like, hey, go put on your best face. And let's go sell some treatment.
You're just going to get a big middle finger from that front office person, and they're going to quit. And that's what ends up happening. And he's saying, oh, they just quit. They can't do it. They can't handle it. And it's like, yeah, that's not it. That's not it at all. And then you say, you know what? Keep your head up. You can do this. You're going to get through it. And it's this full mindset of, toxic positivity, right? Like you're just encouraging them through a failure. And that's just not able to function or work at all.
Yeah, it's and then that same doc is the doc that says this: we can't get good help in our area. No. And you took a lot of good employees and made them bad employees. If you're having turnover and you're having a problem keeping people, it's you. I can't keep staff. I have turnover problems. Keyword doc, listen to me, is I. And I think a big portion of this is that waterfall effect, and that waterfall effect is caused by having those systems and processes. Because if you had systems and processes and limited amount of the chaos, that woman could perform better.
And true support. These systems and processes create that support for your team to know, one, they're doing their job well. A lot of times we have these people in our office and they're like, I don't even know what success looks like. I don't even know if I'm doing a good job. I'm just literally trying to keep my head above water with the 400 things I was told I'm responsible for. But how do we know we're successful?
Yeah, what's your this is a episode about insurance processing verification, but we can't talk about that. As far as I believe with my kids, you can't talk about that and not talk about the human toll of it, because the human toll of it, I think, is the very worst part of this.
Yeah, it decreases your patient experience. It decreases the culture in your practice. It decreases the joy of them even wanting to wake up and come. I mean, if they're walking into a practice stressed out from the moment the time they clock in, like, dude, you've already set your team up for failure. You're not doing anything positive for them or for you. If you want your practice successful, you have to have the systems in place. You have to have your team set up for success, and you have to be able to know what is profitable. I tell doctors all the time, I'm like, dude, if you're having your team touch all these claims and do all these verifications, every time your team is touching these, you're paying significant money. And, they look at verification companies, whether it's per hour or per verification, they're like, well, it costs this much. And I'm like, yeah, what if your team takes an hour to do that verification? Oh, they don't. I said, prove it to me. Where's your system that proves how many verifications they're doing an hour? They're like, well, I don't have that. And I'm like, well, you don't know. Because I can guarantee you every once in a while you have a insurance company on the phone for over an hour that they're trying to get this verified, and you pay that front office person $25. You just paid $25 for that verification, which is higher than anybody in the market. So you have all these systems in place, or lack of systems in place that you think you have, but you rebuttal these verification companies that you're like, you know what, where they're going to be too expensive. And I'm like, you don't even understand the cost or overhead that you have somebody currently doing it in your practice. Same with processing insurance. You're paying them every single time they touch a claim. Billing companies, you're only paying once it gets processed. So where are you actually spending the money? Where are you being efficient? It goes right back into that whole story of Matt, where you have a billing company come in and trying to take over, and you throw them to rake them over the coals. And it's like, dude, they just collected $100,000 for you in 8 weeks, something that your practice couldn't do, but they missed one thing. Like it's taking time to go uphill on an uphill battle because of, the lack of systems that you have in your practice.
It's one of those things that it's like assumed for a long time our staff's doing a good job, but they're really really not doing a good job. And I think that's hard for people, um, because one, they have a emotional connection to this individual. They know about their life. It's one of those things you need to work on, right? And I think that's the biggest thing with this is like if you outsource, you reduce their stress, and then you're in a position of where you have you have an employee that's more prepared to be led because there's less stress on their life. I think that condition is better for success. So we have to kind of wrap this up here in a minute. Zach, do you have anything else you want to say about it?
I think the biggest thing is that I think doctors, you need to start opening your eyes a little bit and just with the harsh reality that your systems aren't working in your practice. And there's ways that you can increase production. One of the biggest things to do that is relieve your team and be able to focus on the things that truly matter and outsource the things that are needed to be outsourced in order for your team to have the time and the efficiency to keep your schedule full, present treatment, all those fun things, which is insurance verification and billing, in my opinion. Those are two things that you could do overnight to free up your team, make them happier, and be able to have the time to increase that production in your practice. The other thing is that's going to give you a lot more steady workflow as far as getting money in your bank faster, looking at what your current AR days and how long it takes you to collect the dollar versus what it's going to go to when you have somebody in a system that can roll every single day, no matter what. So I encourage you guys to open your eyes a bit.
There's one other thing too, is just thinking about if you have that much missing A&R, we also have to assume that those individuals haven't been back through the practice either. And we're always talking about, we always have to talk about like, our schedules fall apart, schedule's not full enough. Well, if those people were reappointed and they were coming back through, they should be addressed at the front desk as they're in walk up and checkout. So if we have $300,000 outstanding, we have to assume one of two things: staff is scared to have the conversation, or those people are not coming through again. Which, if you're complaining about schedule falling apart or being full, that's also a problem because of insurance processing and verification.
So take this week after you listen to this episode, look at your systems, look at your processes, see where you're missing out, run your reports, start looking at those weekly, doc, of what your accounts receivable for insurance, claims not sent, denials, appeals, all those things. Talk with your office manager, come with a system. And if you're feel like there's gaps, that's where you need to start looking into outsourcing this and freeing up your team and increasing your practice culture and production. Matt, I appreciate you having me on the show today.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Zach. You're over on Management Unfiltered. We rarely get to record together. This was fun. I think it's a subject that needs to be approached. It's really, really important. And I think it's something that some docs are scared to even look at or approach for two reasons. I don't want to know what the problem is. Second, I don't want to upset this woman who runs my practice. I think both are stupid reasons to not handle it because it's a lot of money. So, hey, guys, thanks for listening. This is Matt Brown, Dental Unfiltered. Had Zach on from Management Unfiltered. Please like, subscribe, hit follow, share. There's no sponsors. We make no money off this channel. We do it purely for the benefit of you guys. Thank you guys so much and have a great day.
Take it easy, guys.